Amitabho, Amitabho.
Very warm welcome to everybody who's joined the spontaneous call. Obviously, all the jobless people on Monday morning. Monday, only jobless people can join. Nice. So, warm welcome. We're going to start as we do with a minute of silence. Go ahead. Be comfortable. Let's take a nice deep breath. So I had a nice little sign that happened after I announced this call. I was playing with my cat and I put him into a part of, I put him on a ledge that I don't normally put him on. And then right up there, I didn't even realize on that ledge was a statue of Amitabh Buddha. Like, I didn't even realize I kept it up there. So Amitabh Buddha made a reappearance. So this was a nice sign. So yeah. I don't know if you can sit here the whole time. Maybe the camera's not going to catch him. All right. So today's session is on a tradition called Pure Land Buddhism, or the Pure Land. I came across a book, which is a recent book, which I think is very nicely written, a very well-researched book. It's by a scholar. And so I felt inspired to read from the book and share my experiences as we go along about this tradition, which is not that well known. And even if it's known, it's quite misunderstood. I certainly misunderstood it the first time I got to know about it. And in a very simple way, you could say it's like a bhakti marg. It's like a way of devotion and surrender. But as you know, at some point, all the margs, all the paths, they merge. So you can't quite tell what is bhakti, what is gyan, what is karma, what is raja. All the yogas, they merge. So at the beginning level, it could be seen as a bhakti marg. There's an interesting saying in the Pure Land tradition. They say that two categories will benefit. One category will not benefit. So what are the two categories that will benefit? The first category that will benefit is people who are relatively simple-minded folk, uncomplicated folk, people who, you could even say in a way, gullible folk, people who are not, volume is low. Wait, let me get it closer. So the first category that will benefit is very simple-minded folk. Like you could say, I mean, I don't want to, I mean, in some sense, villagers are much more intelligent than us. But you could say, okay, like a village person who's not done a PhD, simple-minded, simple folk. Although villagers may have much higher intelligence than the rest of us who've been overeducated. So first category that will benefit. The second category that will benefit is those who are deeply wise, those who really understand the deeper mechanics of how the mind works and how the universe works. And a third category will not benefit, and that is the middle level. The middle level is they think they know a lot and they're skeptical of everything. So the middle level will actually not benefit. Because for them, it's like, how could it be? This is too simple. It's not possible. Right? So two categories will benefit and one category may not benefit. The Pure Land tradition is, in a sense, you could say it's one of the, and as I describe it to you, you'll realize it starts with simple and then it almost gets to ridiculously simple. I mean, it's like simple to a ridiculous extent, to such an extent that you're like, how could it be? How is that even possible? So it starts simple anyway, then it goes on to a ridiculously simple extent. And it's definitely, this is not a path where you can say, oh, Nitya, I don't have time, or oh, Nitya, I'm not good at meditation, or oh, I have many bad habits. I'm not a virtuous person. I've not made bad karma in the past. So none of those excuses work for this kind of a path. So for some people, it's really good in that way. So we'll learn more, but let me actually just start with this book, and then I'll give commentary as I go along. I'll also share more of my experience as I go along. Also keep the chat box open in case anybody wants to say something. I hope Seema, is the volume better now? Did you even hear that? The rest of you, can you hear me? I'm wondering if Seema, maybe it's on your end. Just play with your volume settings. The rest of you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay, continuing with this book. So it's a recent book. It's a book by Charles B. Jones. See, Pure Land, Kindle book. Pure Land, History, Tradition, and Practice. Charles B. Jones. Terms and conventions. Let me just start with Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Amitabha. This book is about a particular Buddha and his Buddha land, both of which go by many names in different languages. For the convenience of the reader, I will adopt two consistent names in this book. The Buddha at the center of Pure Land Buddhism is called both Amitabha and Amitayus. Amitabha means infinite light, immeasurable light. And Amitayus, Ayu, right? Amrit or Amit Ayu, like infinite life. So it could have two meanings, infinite light and infinite life. In Sanskrit, and Omitofo in Chinese, and Amida in Japanese. Many English studies use the Japanese rendering in all contexts, while others use Amitafo or some other variant of the Chinese. In this book, I will use only Amitabha throughout. The name of his Buddha land can also vary, but in this case, the term is context sensitive. In India, the land was called Sukhavati. Sukhavati means, like Ati. Ati means is to the ultimate, right? Ultimate, Ati. So Sukhavati, a land of utmost bliss, or the land of ultimate bliss. In the term Pure Land was coined in China and did not occur in Indian texts. In East Asia, the Pure Land may take many names, such as utmost bliss, Pure Land, peace and nurturance, and others besides. I will use the terms Sukhavati and utmost bliss when discussing the Indian materials, and utmost bliss and the Pure Land when talking about the East Asian sources. The term Pure Land will also serve as a shorthand name for this religious tradition. Many of the quotations come from the Chinese Buddhist canon. Here are some other notes. You don't read all this. This is more technical. And then this acknowledgements to his various teachers and professors and various people who've helped him along the way. So we can skip that as well. And we're also grateful to all of them because it's a really good book. Preface. Think about Buddhism for a moment. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Okay, I say the word Buddhism. What comes to mind? Perhaps you envision the historical Buddha Sakyamuni seated under a Bodhi tree, aglow with his newly won enlightenment. Maybe it leads you to think of a Zen practitioner wrestling with a koan. You know what a koan is? Koan is an impossible question. There are 2 traditions of Zen. One uses questions, one uses silence. So in koan Zen, they'll give you an impossible question, which doesn't have a logical answer. And it's meant to tire out your logical mind. So you penetrate into a higher mind, higher awareness. And then you have, like, an example of a koan would be, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or what is mu? Mu is not some Japanese word. Mu is just mu. But what is mu? You'll spend days wondering what is mu. What is mu? Or just something as simple as what is this is a koan. What is this? Don't give it a name. What is this? Now what is now? It gets very mysterious. Very quickly it gets very mysterious without names. Right? What is this? Who am I? Could be a koan. All right. So maybe it leads you to think of a Zen practitioner wrestling with a koan under the guidance of a master. You might call to mind the Dalai Lama imparting wisdom or initiations to a large gathering of people. You might associate it with a sophisticated philosophy that seems just beyond your grasp. Or you may think of Asian architecture and gardens or tea ceremonies or evocative, minimalistic ink paintings, swiftly brushed yet perfect calligraphy. I think these days, there are Buddhas in every house. You think of Buddhism, you think of a little Buddha image. Buddha statues have become a centerpiece of interior design these days. But if you're like most people with an interest in Buddhism nowadays, one thing that may not come to your mind right away is the scene of ordinary people holding rosaries and repeating over and over the name of a Buddha that you have never heard of. If you could ask yourself why they are doing this, you'll be surprised to hear them say that this Buddha named Amitabha has promised to come to them when they die and escort them to the Pure Land in response to their devotion. You may ask, what is the Pure Land? It is a paradise located countless Buddha lands to the west of here, where Amitabha reigns. It is filled with jewels, ornate bathing pools, free clothing, food, birds whose very songs teach the Dharma, and best of all, you can stay there as long as it takes you to achieve Buddhahood under Amitabha's instructions. If you want to know how much practice it takes to achieve rebirth in this land, the reply is not much, perhaps none at all. Even people who have done very bad things in their life and never cultivated any spiritual or religious practice can attain rebirth just by calling Amitabha's name on their deathbeds. If you already have some previous knowledge of Buddhism, this will strike you as very strange. Isn't Buddhism about self-cultivation? Doesn't one achieve enlightenment by committing oneself to the path and putting forth the necessary effort and discipline? You might see this as a cop-out, a failure of nerve, a cheap grace, or even a betrayal of Buddhism. If so, you are not alone. Many Buddhists, not only in the West, but in Asia as well, have reacted to the Pure Land teachings in this way. Nevertheless, Pure Land is the dominant form of Buddhism in China, Japan, Korea, tracing its roots back to India, offering a rich panoply of practices supported by a large, diverse, and venerable array of teachers and texts. If you travel to East Asia, any Buddhist you meet is most probably a practitioner of Pure Land. And that is why you hold the present book in your hands. Whether you're a Buddhist practitioner or simply have an interest in other people's religions, I hope that knowing the basics of Pure Land Buddhism will enrich your appreciation of the range of practices and orientations that Buddhism encompasses, as well as give you a fuller knowledge of the Asian Buddhist scene. By the end of this little book, I also hope you will appreciate the complexity of this tradition, which is far more intricate than the cartoonish simplification sketched above. It is a rich, variegated tradition of belief and practice, and learning about it requires us to acknowledge with kindness the religious problems and aspirations of ordinary people in Asia and throughout the ages. If I have managed to pique your interest, then let's turn the page and begin. History and Development, Part 1. The story of Amitabha and his Pure Land. A story is at the heart and foundation of Pure Land Buddhism. Elements of the story are scattered across several texts, much the same way that the life of Jesus rests on 4 Gospels and a few other sources. Nevertheless, just as most Christians think of the life of Jesus as one single story, synthesized from these different texts, the narrative that is about to unfold is the story for all practitioners of Pure Land. To begin with, then, I will recount this narrative. In the next section, I will say a few words about the sources. Many eons ago, first of all, what is an eon? So in Buddhism, we have a very precise in the sense it's not precise, but it's just mind-boggling, I would say. 1 eon, what is 1 eon? So 1 eon, if you think of a mountain that is 18 miles wide, 18 miles deep, 18 miles high, solid granite, or as solid a stone as you can imagine. And there's a bird who flies past this mountain once in 100 years. The bird is carrying on its beak, it's carrying in its beak a silk scarf, the finest silk. And as the bird flies over the mountain, the scarf just gently touches the edge of the mountain. This happens once every 100 years. How long will it take for that mountain to become nothing because of the contact of that scarf? This is 1 eon. Like very poetic ways in which to describe it, right? So this is 1 eon. Or in Pali, it's kalpa. It's called kappa, and in Sanskrit, it's called kalpa. And so many eons ago, a Buddha named Lokeshwara Raja appeared in the world. You probably know this, but it's worth repeating. When the Buddha got enlightened, one of the first things he said was, I'm not the only Buddha. There have been many Buddhas before me, there will be many Buddhas after me. So he never claimed to be the only one who had this knowledge. He said this is the lineage of the Buddhas. So many eons ago, a Buddha named Lokeshwara Raja appeared in the world. An unnamed king heard of this and developed the aspiration to attain enlightenment under his guidance for the sake of all beings. Renouncing his kingdom, he became a monk bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is someone who's inclining to become a Buddha himself. His name was Dharmakara, and he joined Lokeshwara Raja's assembly. As Dharmakara outlined his religious aims to his master, he laid particular emphasis upon the various qualities of the Buddha land that he intended to establish upon his enlightenment. It would be the best among all such lands. All living beings would have access to it. Once they were there, they would escape all suffering, find peace, receive teachings, and be certain to become Buddhas themselves. After he finished setting forth his objectives, he asked Lokeshwara Raja to explain how does one go about attaining or creating such a Buddha land. Lokeshwara Raja praised the sincerity of Dharmakara's aspiration, and he described the features of an astoundingly large number of existing Buddha lands for him. After this lesson, Dharmakara spent 5 eons. So I told you how long 1 eon is, right? 5 eons. He spent 5 such eons pondering all these Buddha lands in order to determine the kinds of vows and practices he would need to undertake to grace his future land with all the best features. When he was done, he went back before Lokeshwara Raja to announce his plans and utter the vows that would determine the nature of his Buddha land and of its inhabitants. Numbering 48 in total, these vows all took the same form. Only if his land and its inhabitants had such and such a characteristic would Dharmakara accept full and perfect enlightenment. After he set forth his vows, Dharmakara embarked on a period of study and training that would last countless number of eons. During this time, he perfected his wisdom, perfected his compassion, and his virtue from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Finally, 10 eons ago, he achieved perfect awakening and became the Buddha known both as Amitabha and Amitayus. The fact that he attained his goal means that all his vows have come to fruition, since he made this the condition for accepting Buddhahood. Thus, his land, called ultimate bliss, Sukhavati, came into being with all the features that he had envisioned. When one knows the vows, one knows the Buddha and his land. Some of these vows establish the character and fame of the Buddha Amitabha himself. His lifespan has got no limit. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in all lands praise and glorify his name. He emits a brilliant light that reaches everywhere. And whosoever the light touches feels profound peace and happiness. Just hearing his name will enable beings to realize the deepest truths. Likewise, hearing his name will enable one to let go of all hindrances and to engage in the deeper practices that they need to attain Buddhahood. Any being who hears his name will never be born with defective sense organs. They will also be able to visit and make offerings to innumerable Buddhas while immersed in deep meditation. And they will only be born into noble families. And like this, there are 48 vows, right? Some vows describe the details of the land. In this land, there are no ghosts, there are no animals, there are no hells. There are only humans and devas. They will all have the same golden appearance. They will never fall into evil paths, right? Then they'll be able to recount countless past lives. They will have the divine eye, Divya Drishti, and divine ear, Divya Shrot, right? And they'll be able to hear and see anything in the cosmos. They'll be able to read the minds of others. They'll be able to travel anywhere in the cosmos. They'll be freed from all attachments. And they'll dwell in the definitely assured stage, which they know for certain that they will one day attain Buddhahood. Practitioners in this land will have lifespans with no limit. They will all display the 32 bodily marks of a great being. They'll be able to expound the teachings perfectly. And so on. This goes on, right? Up to this point, the story seems to indicate that only those who have traveled very far along the Buddhist path can make it into this Buddha land. However, there are 3 special vows, 18, 19, and 20, which is what makes this tradition what it really is. So let's read out the 18th, 19th, and 20th vow of Dharmakara before he became the Buddha. 18. If when I attain Buddhahood, sentient beings in the lands of the 10 directions who sincerely and joyfully entrust themselves to me, desire to be born in my land, and think of me even 10 times, if they should not be born there, then may I not attain perfect enlightenment. 19. If when I attain Buddhahood, sentient beings in the lands of the 10 directions who aspire, who awaken an aspiration for enlightenment and do various meritorious deeds and sincerely dedicate the merits to be born in my land, should not at their death see me appear before them, surrounded by a multitude of sages, may I not attain perfect enlightenment. So he's like saying, unless this happens, I should not attain enlightenment. Number 20. If when I attain Buddhahood, sentient beings in the lands of the 10 directions, who having heard my name, concentrate their thoughts on my land, plant roots of virtue, and sincerely transfer their merits toward my land with a desire to be born there, should not eventually fulfill their aspiration, then may I not attain enlightenment. These vows open up the possibility that practitioners at all levels of achievement can also attain rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss. There is more. While the 3 vows may seem to be open a path into the land of ultimate bliss for people with no practice, or even the evil people, the scriptures also indicate that not all rebirths in this land are the same. There are higher and lower levels of rebirth. And the more one accomplishes before death, the higher the level one gains upon arrival. A higher level puts one closer to the center, enables one to hear the teachings directly from Buddha Amitabha, and shortens the time it takes to become a Buddha. Conversely, a rebirth in a lower level means one alights near the outer border, or even in a special zone just outside the land, receiving instruction from the Buddha's Bodhisattva assistants rather than directly from the Buddha. And it'll take longer to complete the path to full awakening. Despite these differences, the most important thing remains true for all. Birth in the Pure Land at any level guarantees that one has escaped the endless round of birth and death and now dwells in a place of perfect bliss. And one may remain there as long as it takes to achieve Buddhahood. So to summarize, once upon a time, a highly motivated bodhisattva, just setting out on the path to Buddhahood, declared that his future Buddha land would be the best one possible, that all beings of all capacities and at any stage of practice would be able to reach it. Otherwise, he would not become a Buddha. Now, this Buddha has created a land called Ultimate Bliss, which lies to the west of our world, beyond countless other Buddha lands. In this way, he has provided an easy path for ordinary people who cannot engage in strict ascetic practice and study. Amitabha will meet beings at their time of death and conduct them to birth in this land. And once they are there, they will have escaped suffering forever and can begin their long but unstoppable ascent to perfect awakening. This is a source of hope and the basis of all the practices found under the umbrella of Pure Land Buddhism. Let's pause here for a few seconds. I want to read out this quote which I really like from Swami Yukteswar Giri, who is the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda. You might have heard of the book Autobiography of a Yogi. It's a beautiful quote. He says, if you have within you that faith, which is truly divine, if you have within you that faith, which is truly divine, and if there is something that you desire that is not in the universe, it shall be created for you. I'll read it out again. If you have within you that faith, which is truly divine, and if there is something you desire that is not in the universe, it shall be created for you. So this is offering us a very different model of the universe than we've been told. The model of the universe we've been offered is, listen, you've been born into this universe. It's a ready-made universe. If you have so many planets in our solar system, this is a galaxy, then there are other galaxies. These are the laws of physics. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. This is inviolable. This can never happen any other way. This is exactly the way it is. And the model being offered here is, it's not as fixed a universe as you imagine. I remember this quote years back I read. I love this quote. It said, the universe is not made of atoms. The universe is not made of atoms. It's made of stories. The universe is made of stories. Which of us has seen an atom? Most of us have just heard stories about the atom. What the nucleus is, what the electrons are. It's a story, right? And the story keeps changing. As scientists discover new things, the story keeps on changing, isn't it? And love, why not? That's also a great story. So the way I see this tradition is that I remember one book I was reading on Pure Land Buddhism, where a student asks his master, he says, Master, is this Pure Land really true? Is there really a Pure Land? Is it a true thing or is it just a made up thing? So the master counter questioned him and said, is this land, this world, this land, is it true? So the student said, of course it's true. And the master smiled and said, then that land is 1 billion times more true. If this is true, then that's 1 billion times more true. So the idea is that, I mean, you think about it, you know, life is such a mystery. Out of nothing we come, and back to nothing we go. And in between, there are all of these experiences and thoughts and beliefs and everything. So the way I conceptualize this is, let's say I see a human race that is born, lives not that long. Time in any case is subjective, but yeah, whatever, 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, 110 years, not that long. And they're caught up, most of the time they're caught up in just basically figuring it out, managing food and clothing and shelter and just getting by somehow. And let's say I was trying to communicate a greater teaching to them, that there is a greater possibility. How do you communicate such a teaching to humanity? So one way, since the universe is made of stories, one way is you communicate it through stories. Our entire Indian culture, if you look at it, what is culture? Culture is shared stories. One thing that binds our entire country is the story of the Ramayana, story of the Mahabharata, the story of what happened, how we gained our independence. These things bind the entire country. And they create a sense of identity in India. Every country has this. In the US, it's not a very old country, but the US has Star Wars. Star Trek, and really, that's their mythology. They have Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. That's their mythology, right? That's what they have. Their Avengers now. So we do rely on stories to orient ourselves, to make sense of our lives. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Life by itself is very difficult. What's the meaning of anything? So more important question than is it true or is it not? For me, it's like, what a cool story. What a cool story that you have come up with a land where all it takes is focusing single-mindedly. Pure Land tradition is down to three things. There's just three things in Pure Land tradition: faith, vows, and practice. What is faith? That there is such a thing as Amitabha Buddha. There is such a thing as a Pure Land. This is faith, right? What it is, we can keep on that deepening. That understanding will deepen as you go along. But there is such a thing as Amitabha Buddha. There is such a thing as the Pure Land. Faith. Vows. What is vows? That, yeah, I can't think of a better place to go, right? If I can't get to full nirvana in this lifetime, full enlightenment, full quenching, end of everything, I cannot think of a better place to go than a land like that. That's the most conducive land possible. I mean, forget about everything else. Even on this earth, can't you see that different countries are more or less conducive to spiritual practice? There are some countries where there's a lot of openness. You can practice anything you like. Some people, you can only practice one religion. Other religions are all suppressed. Some are against every possible religion. Everything is suppressed. So in this world itself, you would have to agree that there are places where there's more freedom to practice what you believe. And there are some places where there's a lot of oppression, a lot of control, isn't it? So in that sense, some lands are purer than others. So now you look at a universal scale in the entire universe. Although Pure Land is not exactly in the universe, this is another subtle teaching. But nevertheless, let's just take the model idea of a universe. So in this universe, you're looking for the most conducive possible place to continue your practice. And then that would be the Pure Land. And it's not exactly like a heaven realm or a Deva realm, because you're not there. It's not the momentum of your good karma that's keeping you there. So this is where the interesting part comes in. It's actually the grace of Amitabha Buddha. So you may think, this is where it gets really interesting. You may think that you chose to join this call. You may think that. Or if you're watching the recording, you say, yeah, I decided, Nitya, I heard something, or YouTube suggested it. You think so, and I'm going to say no. You were chosen. You were selected. You were chosen for this. This is a good place to tell my story. When I was 16 years old, I went for a Vipassana course. I began meditating. And I had a friend, Raman, and he had many books on Buddhism. So I'd go to his house and I'd read these books. I love reading these books. And the most confusing books of all were these Pure Land books. What is this Pure Land? I mean, you just take a Buddha's name and you go to some heavenly kind of world. I mean, it just made no sense to me. I always put those books aside. Give me any other book. Give me Zen. Give me Tibetan Buddhism. Give me Theravada. I'm cool. But this Pure Land thing made no sense. So I always put it to a side. I said, this is like some kind of strange dilution of Buddhism. And then years later, when I became I was not yet a monk. I'd gone to Thailand and I had to go to Malaysia to renew my visa. So I made a visa run to Malaysia, and I was there with a few friends. And I was staying in a Chinese kind of a paying guest, not a paying guest, it's a kind of a hostel. Kind of a small hotel, I would say, like a family-run hotel, I would say, simple hotel. And we were spending 2 or 3 days there. So constantly they had the sound, this mantra, nowadays you get these little chanting devices. They keep chanting the same thing over and over again. So they had a little chanting machine going on and chanting Amitabha Buddha's name the whole time. In China, Chinese Buddhism, they say Amitofo. Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo. So I asked them, what is the sound? They said, oh, this is the chant of Amitabha Buddha. I said, what is Amitabha Buddha? So they gave me a little pamphlet. They couldn't speak much English. So they gave me a little pamphlet. You can read this. So I sat down and I began reading it. And again, it's saying that, okay, this is Amitabha Buddha has made a vow to rescue all beings. All you have to do is think of him, and you're born in his pure land. You're not born from a mother's womb. You're born from a lotus. You're born lotus born, right? You're born from a lotus over there. In fact, Padmaja supports me in my work. Padmaja's name means lotus born. That's perfect. So you're born from a lotus, and you're born into a, now again, you have to try to describe a different dimension to us. So you have to use our metaphors. Born from a lotus means born into purity, born into a place where there's no birth and no death. Born, but not exactly born. In a way, you're kind of awakening that part of yourself. It's not like you're really born and you really die. So anyway, so I read this, and all you got to do is take the Buddhas. And again, I said, okay, this is too much. This is a level of dilution of Buddhism that even I can't tolerate. So I gave them back the pamphlet. I said, please keep your pamphlet. And that night I was about to sleep. And then a thought came to me that what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose by saying this Buddha? All he's saying is take my name 10 times and you're connected to me forever. So what have you got to lose? If it's made up, some fairy tale someone's made up, well, so be it. But what have I got to lose? I've got nothing to lose, actually. So let's just do it. So I sat on the bed and 10 times I said, Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Before I reached the 10th time, I don't know how it happened. I had tears flowing down my eyes. And I also got confused. Why am I having tears flowing down my eyes? But somehow I connected to the deep compassion. The deep compassion that someone would say, anyone who thinks of me, doesn't matter what they've done or not done, then they get access to a place where they can practice for the rest of time until they themselves attain Buddhahood. Something very powerful and beautiful about that. So the journey back from Malaysia back to my monastery, I was inwardly doing the Amitabha Buddha mantra. And once I got back to my monastery, then again, little by little, I said, oh, maybe I was just fooling myself or whatever. So then I put that aside. I went back to my normal practice. And because you see, the worldview is so different. The worldview of Theravada Buddhism is so different from this worldview. The idea that there are other Buddhas and you can take their name and then they will, it's a very different worldview. So there was cognitive dissonance happening inside me. I just couldn't put the two worlds together. It didn't make any sense. So I continued with my meditation and other practices. And it was, I think, 3 or 4 years later when I was in Sri Lanka. See, this is very interesting. I kept looking for, I don't know if you do this, but I was definitely doing it. I kept looking for the perfect practice conditions, right? So first of all, I became a monk. That's what being a monk is perfect. You can't practice in the household life. It's too busy, too many duties, too many responsibilities. You can't really practice. I'm going to become a monk. So I became a monk. Now, the monastery I was in, they kept us nice and busy from 3 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. We were kept busy. So there were a lot of duties to do, a lot of responsibilities. And after 2 years there, I said, I'm busier here than I was in my household life. Keeping me so busy. I just want to meditate. So I told my teacher, I want to take a break and go to Burma for a few months to meditate. And my teacher wasn't, encouraging me. So finally I said, okay, I'm in the wrong tradition. I've come to meditate and they're just keeping me so busy. So I decided to leave Thailand and I went to Sri Lanka. And again, I found the perfect monastery. It's a huge monastery about, I'm forgetting how many, 2,000-3,000 acres of forest. And the teacher is so kind. And he gave us you meditate as much as you like. You take as much instruction or as little instruction. I've never been to a place that gives you more freedom to do exactly what you like. Because his belief system was, if you become a monk, you've become a monk for the right reasons. Nobody becomes a monk for the wrong reasons. If you're here, you get full freedom. So after about 6-7 months there, where I had full freedom, I could get up when I wanted, I could sleep when I wanted, I could meditate as much as I liked. No one was asking me any questions. That's when all my outer excuses, oh, this is not right, that is not right. All the outer excuses ran out. And I was stuck with myself. I was like, oh my goodness. The problem was not outside. The problem was inside. All that time I could say, oh, it's because I'm busy, oh, it's because of this. But finally I had to admit, it's not because of anybody else. It's my own baggage. It's my own limitation. That was very painful to realize that I only am holding myself back. Nobody else is holding me back. So I kind of felt burnt out because I'd been pushing myself. And I'd been using too much willpower. In fact, in the Pure Land tradition, they have these two words, jariki and tariki. Jariki is self-effort, trying to get enlightened by self-effort. And tariki is other power. You could think of it as grace, you could think of it as blessings, you could think of it as the merits of someone who's walked far ahead of you, so pulling you up. So my practice very much was a jariki practice. Practice, meditate. And I got exhausted. I was thoroughly exhausted. And then walking into my library, the only book I finally gravitated towards the Mahayana section, and the section on, I was willing to now look at those teachings again. And as I read those teachings for the first time, I felt a measure of peace and solace, that I don't have to do it all I don't have to figure it all out myself. And I began reading the Amitabha Sutra and some of the other sutras, and just, I don't know how it started. I just began chanting. Meditation, I was finding it difficult to meditate. I was getting burnt out. I was just finding it too hard. I was pushing myself so much. I just reached my limit. So then I began reading the Amitabha Sutra and the Pure Land teachings. And I began reciting Amitabha's name. And a kind of sweetness came in my heart. A kind of lightness came in my heart. A kind of peace came in my heart. Still, there was cognitive dissonance. A part of me just couldn't understand, how does this stuff work? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, anybody can come up with any story about any Pure Land, any Buddha, and how is it supposed to be? But then day after day, I made a decision. I would do a minimum of 10,000 chants a day. It doesn't take that long if you meditate for 2-3 hours. Don't even have to meditate. You can just be doing your chants. So 10,000 chants a day, which for a monk at least is not difficult at all. So minimum 10,000. I could always do more. So every day I would do 10,000 chants. Namo Amitabha Buddha, or one of the versions, Amitofo, or Namo Amitabha Butsu. And a lot of energy began coming up. A lot of lightness began coming up. Also, a lot of questions began coming up. But somehow the questions, I would get stuck in my head, but the experience was always louder than the questions. The experience was louder than the questions. So the questions were there, but they were not loud enough to overcome my experience. My heart was speaking louder. In fact, Ajahn Chah, one of my teachers, said, there comes a point in your practice where the heart tells itself what to do. And I began maintaining a little diary. I don't know where the diary is gone these days. Must be somewhere. But I began maintaining a diary where I would note down all the coincidences. I had many coincidences. Many strange things happened. Unexpected things happened. Unlikely things happened. And one particular one I remember very strongly, because it was particularly powerful, was one night I was feeling very good about the practice, but my mind I just couldn't fit it into my worldview. How does this fit into my worldview? It doesn't fit into my worldview. So I was like, I need some evidence. I need some proper, solid evidence. Can I have some evidence? And with that thought, I fell asleep. And that night, I had a dream of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is one of the bodhisattvas of Amitabha. He has 2 bodhisattvas. So one of his bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara, he comes in my dream and he hands me a piece of paper. And in that paper is written a word, English word, axiomatic. Axiom, A-X-I-O-M, axiomatic, M-A-T-I-C, axiomatic. I did not even know the meaning of that word. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what? I remember the word very clearly, axiomatic. So what is axiomatic? So I run to the library, I pull out the dictionary, and axiomatic means, you can look it up yourself if you like right now, self-evident without requiring any other validation or verification. It is self-evident. Self-evident requiring no further proof is axiomatic. So Avalokiteshvara saying, now drop this desire to getting proof all the time. It's axiomatic. What you're learning here is axiomatic. It is self-evident, not requiring proof. So that does not mean there isn't proof, though. There is a lot of proof. Proof in terms of the nobility of life. Now, it's interesting, in Pure Land Buddhism, the aim actually is not enlightenment. Fascinating. The aim is to go to the Pure Land. And there the enlightenment will happen, right? So the aim is these three things: faith, vows, and practice. Faith, vows, and practice. Faith that you have now got a connection to Amitabha Buddha. Vows that everything I do is directed towards that. So one simple way of doing that is anytime you do any good deed, kind deed, loving deed, wholesome deed, like even today, I'm sharing all of this with all of you. So I could, at the end of this, like a certain energy gets generated, right? Sharing something like this, a certain beautiful energy gets generated. So then this energy, which normally this is karma. So then you renounce that karma. So you say, may this merit adorn Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. So you're dedicating this merit to Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. You're giving it away. May all the merit of whatever I've done, I've helped someone, I've supported someone, may the merit that's been generated adorn Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. You're dedicating all your merits for the benefit of all beings, for the benefit of all beings, for the benefit of everybody. May it adorn Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. So you keep on renouncing all your merits, all meritorious actions, you do keep on renouncing it. Amitabha Buddha practiced for eons so that he could create a Buddha land for us, which we could easily access. So we also dedicate our merit towards that Buddha land. May it adorn that Buddha land. Pure land versus impure land. So we are considered, our world is supposed to be an impure Buddha field. There are pure Buddha fields and impure Buddha fields. So what are pure Buddha fields? You only have humans and above in a pure Buddha field. In an impure Buddha field, you have hells, you have ghost realms, you have animal realms, you have human realms. But the human realm, you have lots of ups and downs. And basically, it's hard to come across the Dharma. Once you come across the Dharma, it's hard to believe in the Dharma. Having believed in the Dharma, it's hard to practice the Dharma. And having practiced Dharma, it's hard to penetrate the Dharma. That's what makes it an impure land. So there are impure lands and there are pure lands. So impure lands would be like in our planet, in our world, there are countries which are very hard to live in for various reasons, geopolitical reasons, environmental reasons, many, many reasons. There could be earthquakes there, volcanoes there. It's a difficult place to live. So there are difficult places to live and there are easier places to live. So a Buddha land would be one which is comparatively an easier place for us to practice. You're raising your hand, Seema, go ahead.
Hello, Nitya. This Pure Land and about Amitabha Buddha and all the thousands and thousands of Buddhas. Did Shakyamuni Buddha told about all this? Otherwise, how come people will come to know?
Yeah, true. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and I'm sure this book will talk about this more. It is put in the mouth of Shakyamuni Buddha. Whether he actually said it or not, nobody can really know what he said and didn't say. Right? Now, the Theravada tradition will clearly say these are all later additions. The Buddha never said these things. These are all later on, people have added this. And the Mahayanists would say that the Buddha taught according to the capacity of the listener. So the listener who was ready for basic teachings got basic teachings. Those who were ready for more advanced teachings got more advanced teachings. If you look at it in a scholarly way, in a historical scholarly way, then one would have to say that it is, I would say perhaps it is unsure or it is unlikely that the historical Buddha said this. Why? Because the scriptures, the Mahayana scriptures, so different in their style in Theravada scriptures. Also, you can see an evolution in the scriptures. You can see over the century, the scriptures actually evolve. They actually become different as you go along. But this is where also there's a very different point of view. The Theravadins would say we take our teachings from the historical Buddha. He was the true Buddha. He was the one Buddha. And the teachings come from him, right? The Mahayanas would say, no, we get guided, but there are many other Buddhas. And you don't only have to, Buddha doesn't just teach as a physical body. He teaches as a astral body. He teaches as a dharmakaya, nirmanakaya, sambhogakaya, dharamkaya. So he can teach as a physical manifestation. He can teach us in our dreams. And he can teach us also just in our pure experience. All of life is the dharmakaya of the Buddha. So, yeah, so One doesn't know. I would just say it's a mystery. I don't know for sure whether the Sakyamuni Buddha actually said this or not. I like Osho's take on this. He says the truth is what works. If it works, it's true. If it doesn't work, it's not true. So ultimately check if it works for you or not. It may not work for you, and that's fine. Or it may work for you, and then embrace it. See what works for you. Coming back to the three aspects: faith, vows, and practice. So there's faith, which is, another word could be confidence. Confidence that there is a Buddha, there is the Pure Land. There is vows. Vows is that you, like I said, you dedicate, you make a decision that I'm dedicating all my energies, all my work, everything. Even if you're doing any normal job, you dedicate the merits of your work to being born in the Pure Land. Anything you're doing. Right? And practice. There are many kinds of practice. Like even these three vows, there are, like, you could do any wholesome deed, you could dedicate that merit. That would be one kind of practice. You can prostrate, you can visualize. But the practice that's most popular is the practice of, it's called Nianfo or Nembutsu. Nianfo in Chinese, Nembutsu in Japanese. Reciting the name of the Buddha. But that's one of the things he specifically says. Those who call upon me will create a karmic affinity with me, a connection with me, and they will be born in my land. So the most popular form of practice is reciting the name of the Buddha. Now here also there are two very interesting points of view. One point of view is every day, like I was doing, recite as much as possible, quantity, and also as wholeheartedly as possible, quality. Right? So with as much dedication, devotion, love, and as much as possible, do it. Why? Because chances are at the moment of death, then you will remember this. I don't know if it actually happened, but at least in the movie, when Gandhiji is dying, he says, Hey Ram. He may have actually said, Hey Ram. Wonderful. The point is that for him to say, Hey Ram, at the moment of dying, he has to have said, Hey Ram, his whole life. You don't, when you're getting shot in the chest, who says, Hey Ram? Right? You don't think of that. So if you say it enough, then at the moment of your death, chances are that's where your mind will go. And that's where you're going to be reborn. There's another take on this. And this is, we have in Japan two traditions, Jodo Shu and Jodo Shinshu. So Jodo Shu is the Pure Land school and Jodo Shinshu is the true Pure Land school. Jodo Shu was by Honen. Honen was a great scholar, great practitioner, great monk. He learned all the Buddhist traditions. And finally, he realized everything has become too complicated. Everything has become too difficult. In this age where people are so busy, so tired, so corrupted, so complicated, a simple teaching is needed. He brought it all down to, he left all the other teachings, it's just this teaching. Just focus on reciting the Buddha's name. And it became very popular in the time of Honen. One of the Honen students, Shinran, he took it one step further and he said, even your constant reciting is actually showing your lack of faith. This is again Jariki and not Tariki. You're again depending on your own power. So he said, the moment one time you think of the Buddha, like maybe in my case it was when I said it the first 10 times and tears came in my eyes and there was a kind of connection. He says, one time in true faith, you take the Buddha's name, the connection is made, it's done. You can still recite, but now you recite out of gratitude. You don't recite that may I be, oh, I hope I remember to say this and I die. And then I go there. No, it's done. It's the deal is sealed. One time you had faith, one time you did the recitation, one time you made the vow, it is done. It's complete. Doesn't require constant repetition again and again and again and again. So one path emphasizes some practice and one path emphasizes gratitude. It's really gratitude. It's a path of gratitude. The rest of your life you will chant out of gratitude. You see, those of you who are attending, you may or may not find this path interesting for you, but the principles apply to any path, whether you're a Krishna devotee or a Ram devotee or a Christian or whatever. Can you see the deeper principles here, the psychology that's working over here? What a beautiful psychology. Are you practicing from Jariki or are you practicing from Tariki? And what What balance of that works for you? What's right for you? Why would a Buddha want you to recite his name? Certainly, it's not out of ego. The more you recite my name, the better it is. It's to create a connection. It is actually out of compassion for you. It is for you to remember those qualities. And okay, here, let's go one level deeper now. All right. The next level to this is that this is only for the beginners. What I've just described so far is for the beginners. Actually, Amitabha Buddha is here. Your innermost nature is Amitabha Buddha. Think about it. When you open your eyes in the morning, you can see a room, you can see a world, you can see the stars. It requires you to open your eyes, right? If you don't open your eyes, you can't see any of that. Like when I have a torch, when I put on the torch, it lights up the room, it lights up the surroundings. When I put the torch on, it lights it up. If I don't put on the torch, it doesn't light it up. In a way, isn't it true that when you open your eyes, you light up that room with your consciousness, you light up that vicinity, you light up that city, you light up the world, you light up the sky. When you close your eyes, it doesn't light up, it becomes dark. When you open your eyes, it's visible. Infinite light, infinite light. The infinite light of the world comes from here. That is the Amitabha Buddha. Infinite lights. And the universe appears before you. At birth, the universe appears. At death, the universe disappears. What appeared and disappeared, the entire universe appeared and disappeared before you. You are older than the universe. You did not appear into the universe. The universe appeared before you. You are the eternal one. You are the ageless one. You are the timeless one. You are Amritayu. So this is where we go deeper. And what is the impure land? Impure land is you believing this world is in big trouble. You believing all the nonsense that comes in the newspapers. That's what makes it an impure land. And when you chant the Amitabha Sutra, or when you think of these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you're purifying your perception. Your way of speaking, behaving, thinking with everyone around you is getting upgraded, leveling up. Are you not creating a Buddha field right here? Are you not awakening your inner Amitabha to recognize the Sukhavati that's already here? Isn't that exactly what you're doing? So in a way, this is not about, so at one level, there is another Buddha, there is a Buddha land, I'm going there. This is one level you could look at it. And the other level of looking at it is, I'm awakening every time I recite Amitabha Buddha, I'm awakening the inner Amitabha Buddha. And I'm seeing this world as a pure land. When I see it, when the mind is pure, the land is pure. Have you noticed that? When your mind is impure, every house, every place you're in becomes impure. But when your mind is pure, the land is pure. That's what they're talking about. Yatha drishti, tatha shashti. Can you again reshare the meaning of, so it's jariki and tariki. Jariki is self-effort and tariki is other power. So this is a big concept in Pure Land. So in a way you could say tariki, you could say is, I may assume, just looking at myself, I am like a beginner level, I'm like an intermediate level, I'm like a high level. We say to people, oh, you're an old soul. What do you mean you're an old soul? Oh, you just talk like someone who's so wise, you are so sorted, you don't get activated, so you're an old soul. So you can tell, like some people, they always want to buy new things all the time. They're going from one place to the other. Oh, you're a new soul. You want to experience everything in life. You're like a young soul. All right, fine. Have your fun. Do your thing. You're a young soul. You're a middling soul. You're an old soul. But let me tell you, these are also assumptions. We don't really know how old anyone's soul is. So another aspect of Tariki is, I receive the merits of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, or whatever if you prefer, Krishna's merits or Jesus's merits. You're receiving the merits of God, of the divine, of the Buddha, whatever terminology you like to use, but you're receiving their punya, the blessing, the grace, right? So every time I'm chanting, I'm receiving the grace of all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas. And therefore, I am magnifying my own capacity to practice. I'm not just dependent on my own assumption, oh, I've not done much good in my life, oh, I'm this and that. Every time you recite, you're activating that entire infinite field of merits. So this is the Vajrayana method of mind purification. It's a little different method than the Theravada method. Theravada method is more of analysis, vigatan vibhajan, vigatan vibhajan, vigatan vibhajan. Open it up, analyze, open it up, analyze, analytical. It's an analytical process. What is the mind? What is the body? Body is made up of elements. Mind is made up of feelings and memories and intentions and consciousness. And you break that up. What different kinds of feelings are there? What different kinds of perceptions are there? What different kinds of intentions are there? What are the elements of consciousness? You can keep on doing Vigadan, Vibhajan, and you start realizing, oh, this is all just a process. There's nothing here. There's nothing here to hold on to, nothing here to get affected by. Body does its body thing, mind does its mind thing. This is the approach of one form of the Buddha's teachings. Then the approach of the Vajrayana tradition is that as I think of the Buddha, as I think of, in the moment I'm thinking of the Buddha, where do I separate myself and Buddha? Try separating. When you're thinking of something beautiful, where do you separate yourself from beauty? You have become beauty. Your mind has become Buddha. In that moment, anyone you think of, at some level, your mind is becoming one with their mind. And that's how, by affinity, this is how Tariki works, by affinity. By thinking and speaking and behaving. Your thoughts, words, and actions all begin to change and take on that kind of format. Another kind of evidence, even though I said it's kind of self-evident, it's axiomatic, but there is another very interesting form of evidence. Somehow in China, they have done a great, I don't know why they do this, but somehow centuries upon centuries, they have been obsessed with keeping historical records. I think more than any other country, China has kept detailed historical records going back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. So they're chroniclers. They love to chronicle, right? And so many, many stories have emerged of people who attained who had remarkable deaths. And most of these stories are found in the Pure Land tradition. Of course, they're also found in other traditions. But the fact that an ordinary person, someone who was selling vegetables their whole life, someone who was a housewife her whole life, someone who was just an ordinary person, dying a very remarkable death, this is seen so often in the Pure Land tradition. One thing it takes away is the whole anxiety around death and rebirth. Not only that, many of these people are able to predict when they're going to die. They have a sense that I'm going to die, so and so my time is coming. They know. They may know months before, they may even sometimes even know years before. Some of them make full-on preparations. They prepare, they even stitch funeral clothing for their children. You wear this on my funeral. Like full preparation, like you know you're going to die, so full preparations are made. It is not unusual for them to die in a seated position. There was one fascinating story I heard about a man who, he was not even very young when he began practicing somewhere in his late 40s or early 50s. And he had a friend who was a monk, and he said, give me some practice, I want to do it. So he gave him this practice of chanting Amitabha Buddha's name. And this man used to be a laborer. He used to actually work a lot of physical work. And his friend had become a monk. And his friend actually became a very senior monk. So he went to his friend and said, I have done a lot of work in my life. I want to now develop myself spiritually. So please guide me. So he gave him Amitabha Buddha's mantra. He practiced very diligently. Every day and every night he would practice. And about 3 years later, he sent a message to his friend, please come and meet me on so-and-so date. So his friend is a very senior monk. His friend arrives. There's no one in the house. He finds his friend standing over there. His eyes are closed. He goes close to him and realizes he's died. He's died standing. The body is not even fallen. He's standing and he's died. The body stood there for 3 days before it gently began to collapse to a side. For 3 days, it stood after his passing away. This is an ordinary person who only practiced for 3 years. And like this, there are countless stories of people, when they die, then people see rainbows in the sky, or people will smell fragrance like an incense stick, or people will have visions and dreams. And so the number of stories like this are literally in the hundreds, maybe in the thousands. There are so many stories like this. So it's very, very encouraging. And these stories even happen in recent times. You go to YouTube and you search for Pure Land Buddhism, you search for cases of rebirth, and you'll find stories even in recent times where people have died very remarkable deaths. So again, truth is what works. So at least for these people, they have become fearless in the face of death, and they've died in a very graceful, joyful, and peaceful way. Anybody wants to ask something? I can read a little bit more. Clarify something. Yeah, go ahead, Natasha.
Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just quickly checking the difference between Jodo Shu and Jodo Shinshu. I'm not too clear about that.
Yeah, Jodo Shu comes from Honen, and Jodo Shinshu comes from his student Shinran. So Honen was the one who popularized from in China. See, these things were there. In fact, in this book, it'll explain more. But essentially, the Buddha's Pure Land was a well-known teaching in Mahayana Buddhism. It was not an unknown thing. However, there was a kind of belief that you require when you die, then a lot of prayers have to be said, and a lot of like in India also we say, samagri lao, have this and do this puja and this havan and this and that, and then you'll go and be reborn. And so only rich people seem to can kind of afford that kind of thing. So what Honen did was, he said, that's fine if you want to do it, but everybody, the Buddha has never said all of that. You need to do all of these different rituals and this and that in order to be born there. So he made it radically simple. He said, everybody just start repeating the Buddha's name. Nembutsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Just keep repeating the Buddha's name. And there are 3 sutras of Pure Land Buddhism. There's one shorter sutra. There's one main sutra, which is quite long. And then there's the visualization sutra. He said, just focus on the first sutra. The 3 are there, but just recite. The first sutra will take you about 15 minutes to recite at the most. So reciting the sutra, and most of all, repeating the name, he radically simplified it. And that's where it became a very, very popular teaching. You see, like Krishna has been popular in India for a very long time. But the Hare Krishna made it even more popular. Just start chanting Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama. The whole Maha Mantra that they chant. So they made it extremely popular by just focusing on that mantra. And say everything else is contained in this mantra. So in a way, that's what Honen did. Now, one of his students, Shinran, and by the way, you'll realize even though it's a kind of an easy path, I do not know any tradition where they practice as intensely as this path. Like in China, there was one kind of practice where, it's unbelievable to even say it. They walk around the Buddha statue for 90 days, 90 days. 90 days, they continuously walk around the Buddha statue with very short breaks for whatever water and everything else. They continuously circumambulate the Buddha statue for 90 days doing the Nembutsu. That is mind-blowing. So when Shinran came across these kind of practices, he said, again, we've gone back to Jariki. Again, we've gone back to self-power. This way, again, we are closing the door. This is not what Amitabha Buddha intended. Yeah, if you want to do it for yourself, you do it, but don't make it so difficult. Don't make it so complicated. So Shinran said, the Buddha's vow, the fact that you're thinking of him is also his grace. It's not your decision. The fact that you're thinking of him means you have already been selected. You've already been chosen. He already has singled you out for his grace. So now just be grateful. So it's practicing from a place of it is already so. Not that I hope it becomes so at the time of my death. It is already so. That's the difference. So the Jodo Shinshu school, the Shin Buddhism it's called, is actually far more popular in Japan than the Jodo school. Does that answer your? Yeah.
So Nitya, my only question here is, Jodo Shinshu school basically talks about, no rituals basically, right? I mean, just chanting the name. Whereas the Jodo Shu,
I'm sure they'll have their own, some kind of rituals. I'm not that deep into it. But they are quite, they do focus a lot on scriptures because they try to interpret the scriptures in the light of their understanding. They'll say, listen, that's how they do a lot of scholarship work. Rituals are quite low, I would say.
And Jodo Shu is ritualistic.
Married priests, they usually their own temple. So it's more like a hereditary thing. So you're married and then your son kind of runs the temple. That's how typically the tradition passes on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that 90-day ritual that you were talking about, so they just 90 days, right? And they just stop for food and no sleep, nothing?
Practically don't sleep. They practically, it's like the walking samadhi. It's like unbelievable. I don't know any other tradition that practices that intensely. 90 days of non-stop walking and chanting. 90 days is unbelievable. But that kind of energy can only come from a higher power. How are you going to, as a human being, exert that kind of energy? So you're obviously tapping into a whole other field, whole other level.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Anjali is saying something.
Thanks, Vidya. I was just wondering about, the emphasis on at the time of death. What about the influence it has in your life in current times? Like because how you die is basically how you live, right? Like you mentioned, Mahatma Gandhi, he must have said Ram, Ram, Ram several times for him to be able to say Ram at the time of death. So, how does it influence life?
I would say it's a very morbid religion. You're thinking about death all the time. And the Buddha would say it's a good thing, actually. Our unwilling, as a society, we're in denial of death, isn't it? We get so shocked when someone dies, even though newspaper every day is telling us about people dying. So we are in denial of death. And this religion recognizes that, first of all, death can come at any time. There's no guarantee. It's a very precious opportunity we have. And so how can I live best? I live best by dedicating myself to growing in wisdom, growing in compassion, to following the Buddha's teachings. So in Pure Land Buddhism, definitely you want to use your talents and skills for the benefit of everybody. You're like a baby bodhisattva, actually. You're a baby Buddha. You're trying to become Buddha yourself, right? So you're in this world also. You try to behave like a mini Amitabha Buddha. How would Amitabha Buddha behave in this world? And you do everything you can to support everyone you can, to the maximum extent you can, before it's your time to go. And when you go, you go and you train with the Buddhas, and you come back even more powerful. So this world is important to prepare ourselves to let go of all our old patterns, our old habits, and to purify our mind, purify our heart. And what better way of living also?
Yeah.
And I think in my experience, it gives a very deep confidence. अब देखो जब भी time आएगा जाने के लिए जाएंगे, सुख से जाएंगे, right? That kind of confidence comes. So whenever the time will come, we will go, and we'll go in a very peaceful way. Not going, oh, my family, oh, this, oh, I didn't do that. Or you're ready to go. You're ready to go at all times. That's the kind of attitude that comes from this kind of practice.
So if one forgets to say Namo Amitabha Buddha at the time of death, then also you're able to go to Pure Land if you've said it sometime before that.
Yeah, so you may not. It's less about saying it, and it's more about your consciousness, right? So if you have practiced this deeply enough, then whether or not you say it, your consciousness is going in that direction. So you will. In fact, there's a nice teaching about this, that that there are two classes. Like when you go to the airport, there are two categories of people who don't have to go through the normal security, check-in, baggage. Those steps you have to follow. You enter the airport, they check your ID, then you go and you check in, then you go to security. You have to follow these 3, 4, 5 steps before we get into the plane, right? But there are two categories of people who don't have to follow those steps. So what are the two categories? First category is, if you're a prisoner being moved from one prison to the other. You'll never find a prisoner going through these steps. They'll take them from outside and straight into the plane. And they put a handkerchief over the hand so you can't see the handcuffed. But he's handcuffed to another policeman who's in plain clothes. This is how you'll transfer a prisoner. Prisoner will not go through all the normal steps. And the second category is someone who is like a VIP, like a head of state, like a president or a prime minister. They'll never go through all those steps. They'll go straight to the plane and inside. So the same Pure Land Buddhism. Normally when you die, there are intermediate states. There are many, many intermediate states. You will review your past life, you'll review your life, and you will have this experience and that experience. And then there'll be moments of confusion, there'll be moments of clarity. There are many, many intermediate states. But when you do the Pure Land practice, you skip all the intermediate states. You go straight to the Pure Land. You bypass all of this. So only two cases you bypass. One is if you really lived a very evil life, really hurt beings in a very deep way. Well, straight down to the dirty, dark, horrible places. It's your own mind, actually. And if you've done this kind of practice, again, you bypass. You go straight into the Pure Lands. I don't know what I was answering, but this is what I remembered. What were you asking?
its influence in your life,
Ah.
in as you live it. Yeah.
So the influence in your life is, it's designed to make you a very refined, I would say, very refined person. So in this world, you're very refined. A refinement comes into your being. A refinement in your thoughts, your words, your actions. Not necessarily saintly. It's not exactly, you don't necessarily have a big aura or something, but there's a certain refinement that comes. And that's, I think they call them Myokonon. I think that's the word, if I'm not mistaken. Myokonon, someone who is a good human being. That's the aim of Pure Land Buddhism. You live in this world as a good human being. You do all your duties, do all your responsibilities, take care of everything in a nice, graceful, easy way. You don't deny your humanity. A big part of this is actually embracing your foolishness. The word in Buddhism is, in Pure Land Buddhism, is bombu. Embrace your bombu nature, your foolish nature. So we're not trying to become saints. We are making peace with our humanity. We're coming to terms with ourselves.
And would it be similar to saying Namo Amitabha Buddha? Would it be similar to saying Buddham Sharanam Gacchami?
In a broad way, it is, but in a specific way for this, they want you to align specifically with Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. In a way, is the same thing, because it's, I take refuge in awareness. I take refuge in dharma, the teachings that lead us to awareness, and the sangha that does that. So in a way, it's true. But like I said, Pure Land is a very specific teaching of a specific Buddha and a specific Pure Land. So it is a skillful means. So I would not say in that way, I don't think it's exactly the same thing. Yes, lifetime after lifetime, if you take Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, lifetime after lifetime, you should keep associating with such people and moving in that direction. But it's not considered to be the same as the Pure Land.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me read a little bit from a different book now. Sujay, let me just take Sujay's question. You've been reading it. Sujay, go ahead.
I've been born as a Sri Vaishnavite in this birth. So I am told to recite this Om Namo Narayanaya, Sriman Narayana Charanam, Sharanam Prapadde, Srimate Narayana. This is the shloka which is being told to us. Even at the time of death, you recite this. So that has been told, and I believe that also. Now to change over to this, I find it. Okay.
Continue.
Okay. That's what I had this doubt about this.
No. Ultimately, at least the way I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are orthodox people who say, no, unless you say Amitabha Buddha, there's no hope for you. But then everybody will have their favorite thing. Unless you say Krishna, there's no hope for you. Unless you say Shiva, there's no hope for you. That's not the way I think. I think there's a deeper principle of operating over here. And if you have an affinity to... See, all the truly wise teachers I've had, they've all said, don't get caught in concepts. Understand the deeper principle. The deeper principle is awakening that innermost essence within you. Now, whether you call it Narayana, whether you call it Krishna, whether you call it Shiva, whether you call it Ganesha, whether you call it Buddha, whether you don't call it any of those things, you call it some word like wisdom or truth, that's ultimately the point. And these are all upai, these are all skillful means. Strokes for different folks, right?
Okay. Just let go and live a life of compassion.
You come back, you look at the teachings of your tradition and say, what are the essential teachings of my tradition? Am I living in accordance? There are obviously many complicated teachings, but there's some very basic, simple teachings. Can I live in alignment with those teachings? And then when you say Narayana or you say Buddha, as far as I'm concerned, that's the way I think. That one should not limit oneself in this way. If you truly have faith and you're able to feel that guidance, you feel that support, every mantra, because ultimately it's all one truth. We're thinking about different truths and different things. It's one truth. It's one word, one life. It's one dream. We're all waking up from it.
Okay.
So the Buddhists would say that Amitabha Buddha has taken the form of Narayana. The Hindus would say Narayana has taken the form of Amitabha Buddha. It's all fine. Actually, it's true. That's what's happening, actually. That one ultimate is taking the form of these varieties to bring us back home, bring us back home, bring us back home. It's all about coming home to ourselves. Whatever helps you come back home, come home. If it brings you back home, it's fine. Home is where the heart is.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Seema?
Nitya, how to practice Vipassana meditation and Anapana meditation now? Because in the back of your mind, this Amitabha Buddha and all mantras are chanting. So
See,
it is becoming difficult.
You have to understand, are you part of an exclusive tradition or an inclusive tradition? I have always been part of, no, see, you have to check for yourself. I have always, my spiritual inclination has always been towards more and more and more inclusive teachings. I'm not intuitively drawn to any exclusive teachings. And that might be my own delusion, who knows? Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it should be exclusive. Maybe it is a very narrow path. But where I come from, my intuition, my spiritual intuition says it's not a narrow path. It's an incredibly wide path. In fact, it's so wide that nothing is not the path. This is what my intuition says, right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that
everybody,
just to finish my thought, then we'll come back to you. This does not mean that I will tell everybody, or do anything, nothing matters. No, things do matter, right? But the place I'm coming from is a very inclusive place. So I believe when someone like Goenka ji says, don't do these other practices, don't mix it up, stay with this, stay with Anapana, stay with Vipassana, do not mix up any other. He's coming from compassion because he knows what basically hodgepodge people we are. We are constantly mixing up this, that, and making a total soup out of everything. But who am I to say what Goenka ji really was trying to convey? But as far as I'm concerned, this truth is multifaceted. And anyone who says this one technique, this one process, this will give you everything. No. I mean, even for Pure Land Buddhism, I would say that. It's taken me a lot to come to a place where I can appreciate something like this. It's taken me countless Vipassana courses and countless other courses to come to a place where I can appreciate the depth of this teaching and the beauty of this teaching. So all of that took me to this point. It is transcend and include, not transcend and include. So my purpose in life is to transcend and include. Just like look back at your toys or your clothes as a youngster. You don't say, what horrible toys, what horrible clothes. No, there was a time I loved those toys. There was a time I loved those books. There was a time I loved those clothes. They don't fit anymore. So let it happen naturally, organically. Don't try to, just because I'm teaching this doesn't mean you have to do this. If it's not coming organically, continue with your breath meditation, continue with your Vipassana meditation. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all you need. Or maybe you'll find that something's missing. Something isn't complete here. I've been doing this mechanically for too long and something is drying up inside of me. And then be open to some different perspectives.
I would like to say one thing. After started chanting Tara Mantra and Amitabha Mantra and all, I have started rejoicing more. And as all elders, all lamas, Opa Rinpoche and all tell, rejoicing is the fastest way for accumulating and creating merit and distributing merit. So it's a beautiful practice.
That's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you for conducting this session. So many doubts are cleared. Thank you.
My aim is just to share a different approach to practice than some of us are familiar with. And that will open up your mind. And whatever practice you do, you will find it'll support you. Right? Let me read a little bit from a different book. Who Loves Dies Well by Dharma Vidya.
तुमने सुना मैंने क्या पूछा?
Chapter 4, Absolute Grace. Amidism, he's calling the Pure Land tradition Amidism. Amidism is faith in absolute grace. In the idiom of Buddhism, this grace is often called light. The light, which is Abha in Sanskrit, or Ko in Japanese, of Amida cannot be, Amida is Amitabha Buddha, in Japanese it's called Amida, of Amida cannot be obstructed. It is Mugeko, unimpeded light. A person can close his heart and mind to it, or may believe they have never encountered it, but there is nothing that can actually make it non-operative. Amida's door is open to whomsoever may want to enter. This is the most striking and radical feature of Amidism. There is no judgment and no membership criterion other than sincere intention. So we say that there is a measureless light, Amit Abha, or grace, that illumines this and all possible worlds. From this light or grace spring the four immeasurables: Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. And all the ethical and compassionate teachings of Buddhism and all other religions. This is not a call for people to work at being or becoming loving or compassionate. It is a recognition that those who open themselves to grace naturally become so. See the difference between Jariki and Tariki. We're not saying become more loving, become more kind, become more grateful. No, just open yourself. When you open yourself, you will automatically become like that. This is the path of surrender. It is a recognition that those who open themselves to grace naturally become so. They soften. Life becomes more real, more meaningful. Love is not a skill. Love is a response. Unconditional love is a response to unconditional acceptance. How beautiful is that? Amida's grace is called a light because people experience it as light. In the mystical experience in which Amida appears before us, one of the most compelling elements is the light. We rarely do see the world in a new light, and that light rarely is more radiant than the light of the sun and the moon that we usually experience. Religion is rooted in such experiences that come at the point of death and that come to adepts who open themselves fully to that light in the middle of life. Pure Land. In Pure Land, we talk of this experience using the name of Amida. Amida is simply a contraction of Amitabha. It is not a problem to Amidism that mystics of other religions describe this experience using the language of their culture and say that they encountered it through an angel or a messenger from God. One would expect that they would do that. This is confirmation of the ubiquity of the experience. Amida's grace is not just for those who believe in Amida. But why do we not see the Buddha's light most of the time? Because we scatter our faith. The possibility of gathering one's faith is always open. To do so is to return to simplicity. In practice, however, people's faith is not awakened by their own decision or their own effort. Even that is an act of other power. When you ask a person if they have faith in something, they look inside themselves to see if the answer is yes or no. They don't make a decision. All we can do from our own side is examine our actual situation, recognize our bombu nature. Bombu nature is foolish nature. We are fools. Deep down, we're pretty foolish. And you embrace your foolishness. Recognize our bombu nature and acknowledge the longing within us that calls out for paradise. The stark contrast between what we find ourselves and our world to be, and what we know is a desire of our heart of hearts, creates a dynamic that drives our spiritual life. In classical Buddhism, spiritual awakening is called Bodhi or Buddha, hence Buddha. Buddha means awaken. Bodhi has more the sense of awakened vision. These are the times when the dark world and the light come into clear focus, and one may speak of mystical experience. In Pure Land, a slightly different terminology tends to be used. Here we speak of the experience, Shinjin in Japanese, or Prasada in Sanskrit. This indicates the awakening of faith, of the faith aspect of the experience. In an Amidism, the notion of measureless light rests upon the equivalence between the light of faith and the light of enlightenment. The light experienced at the point of death, the light of love, and the light of purity, the light of truth, and the grace of Amida. Because we are Bombu, we never see the absolute truth directly, nor can we consciously be in touch with it permanently. It will always be mediated through form and relativity. So it will appear to our mind in a specific way at a specific time. A state of permanent, absolute clear seeing is conceivable, but not attainable. What would be perceived were this state to be attained is called Dharmakaya, truth body. Things as they are when undistorted by human perception. Human perception, however, is interpretive, even at the highest stages of spirituality. We can know as knowledge of faith, however, that the Dharmakaya is simply things as they are. There is a great deal written about the Dharmakaya in Buddhist literature, and it is said to be a non-dual state. Pure Land, however, is not focused upon an exploration of the absolute or of non-duality, but upon the spiritual position of the ordinary being of blind passion existing in dynamic relationship with the unimpeded light of infinite love. Amidism is a spirituality of relationship. Everything about it is oriented towards the encounter with the otherness, whether the otherness is Amitabha in contrast with the self, or the simple otherness of the world around us. It is a spirituality that is extroverted and receptive. Although seeing the absolute directly is not available to us, a state of relative clear seeing is attainable, though rare. This is the Shinjin experience. It is relative in the sense that it is experienced as an encounter, as a form of relating. What is perceived in this state is called Sambhogakaya, enjoyment body. Such experiences are transformative awakenings that give rise to a settled faith, anjin, or sincere or serene confidence, which cannot be dislodged, and so is called irreversible. This faith is settled because it is based upon a deep experience that can never be undone. Although a person who has experienced Shinjin may relapse into forgetfulness from time to time, just as the moon goes through phases, the knowledge of having seen the light can never be erased. Shinjin, therefore, is an awakening of faith. It is arguable that Shinjin, under different names, is a source of many great religions. Equivalent experiences are reported by mystics of most creeds all over the world. This light is interpreted by different cultures in different ways. Religions are like transformers of an electrical grid, stepping down the current for domestic use. Encountering the light may take a variety of specific forms. Even in the most elevated spiritual state, we are still foolish beings of blind passion, and we see reality through our own filters. However, we can loosely classify Shinjin experiences into two types. The first type, the person experiences the world is complete and perfect just as it is. This responds to the mystic saying, all is well and all shall be well and all manner of things shall be well. Paradisiacal descriptions, such as one finds in scripture, hint at the nature of that experience. This is the awakening that came to Sakyamuni Buddha when he finally despaired of the Jiriki practice of asceticism. It can be called enlightened vision, bodhi. Within the enlightened vision, one experiences the world illuminated by the universal light. Such a world is called a pure land, Sukhavati, or Jodo in Japanese. In the second type, the person experiences being unconditionally accepted by the universe or by a transcendent being. So you're getting it, the two types. One is you experience the world as though the world is perfect. You see the world as it is. It has been well, it is well, it shall be well. All is well. You see the world as perfect. But here's the second type. In the second type, the person experiences being unconditionally accepted by the universe or by a transcendent being. This is the experience of unconditional love, Maitri. The second type, therefore, takes the form of an encounter with a being rather than an encounter with a land. These two types of experience both occur, as do hybrids, of which both aspects are experienced. How beautiful is that, right? So you experience yourself, the other being is seeing you as perfect. You have a hard time seeing yourself as perfect, but that being sees you as perfect. That's Shinjin. That's a moment of transformation. Wow, someone saw me as perfect. Amidism is simply one particular way of pointing it out, talking about it and relating to it. Followers of other religions and other schools will have their own terminology. The being of unconditional love and measureless light is Amitabha. Direct religious experience, therefore, is more or less a clouded glimpse of Amitabha or Amitabha's pure land. In Mahayana Buddhism, There are other Buddhas who have their own Pure Lands. But from a Pure Land point of view, we may see all these lands as instances of Amitabha's land. Such glimpses may occur during life. They most commonly occur at the time of death. Pure Land teaches that the light experienced at the point of death is Amitabha's light. The same light is experienced in all degrees of enlightenment experience. So Pure Land understands spiritual experience in simple religious terms. We encounter a sacred realm. It is different from ourselves. It is outside. It affects us. Its effect upon us is an act of grace. That grace is freely given. It is not earned. You might be a sinner. You might be a saint. Buddha cares for you just the same. It is living in conscious relationship to grace that makes our life divine, whether virtuous or not. This does not, however, constitute license, since those who open themselves to grace undergo a natural transformation. The knowledge of being truly acceptable, of being seen as noble in the very midst of one's folly and suffering is profoundly affecting. One knows intuitively that Nyorai wants to live a life, I don't know what Nyorai is, wants to live a life of kindness, love, beauty, and goodness. One knows that due to karma, one often fails to do so. Sometimes we heed Nyorai, sometimes we do not. Sakyamuni Buddha said in the Dharmapada, the heedful do not die. The heedless are as though already dead. Sometimes we heed, often we do not. And this shows us that our relationship to goodness is indeed like a relationship. It functions like all our other relationships. Sometimes we listen, sometimes we do not. If the good were our intrinsic nature, we would be in contact with it. If it were antithetical to our nature, we could never embody it. In fact, we are neither intrinsically good, nor are we intrinsically bad. We are a bundle of karma, but we can heed sometimes. And this is because it is a relationship. It is a relationship to a being and to a domain. So as a Pure Land Buddhist can say, I believe in the nirvana pointed out by the Buddha. I believe in the domain of perfect peace, love, truth, and beauty. I believe that from that realm comes health and inspiration. I believe this is what animates Buddhas. I believe that what Buddhas are engaged in is glorifying that realm, the unborn, the unconditioned, the uncontrived. I believe that Buddhas are portals between ordinary beings and that unborn state. I believe that Buddhas live ordinary, mundane, mortal lives, and yet the eternal shows in them. This eternal life is their true life, yet it is not known. I believe that the life of devotion is the best life. I believe that the faith to live such a life is itself a grace. Fortunate are those who receive it. I believe that I shall be bestowed that grace when I see and sincerely lament my own shortcomings. I believe that such grace spreads through spiritual friendship. Those who have been graced, becoming those who carry grace to others. I believe that grace empowers and guides us. I believe that those touched by grace recognize one another. I believe this is the root of religion in general and the principle upon which true peace between faiths can emerge, war and strife can cease. For the Buddha has taught that everything that is of the nature to arise also has the nature to cease. I believe that Buddhas are empowered to point out these truths in a variety of skillful methods because they themselves are basking in the grace of other Buddhas. I believe that everyone is acceptable to Buddha, no matter what mistakes they have made or what harm they have caused. I believe in love, in truth, in beauty. I believe that Amitabha's light is enfolding us in life and meeting us at the time of death. I believe in the Pure Land. I believe that we are here to live as a company of spiritual friends for the benefit of all sentient beings. I believe that there is nowhere in the world where that light of grace does not fall. Even those who live irreligious or corrupt lives can still be touched by Buddha's grace and will find themselves doing the Buddha's work, wittingly or unwittingly. There is grace at work in our world. What a nice, powerful passage, non-stop. He was in flow there. People ask whether the Buddha or the Pure Land actually exists. All we can say is that they exist in the experience of many people. Good answer. They are encountered, and this encounter changes lives profoundly. Spiritual experiences are a matter of fact. And in Pure Land, there are categories we use to explain them. For instance, in science, there are categories like energy and momentum to explain the way that physical bodies behave. One cannot demonstrate energy or momentum separately from physical bodies moving, nor can one demonstrate the Buddha independently of spiritual experience. However, bodies do move and beings do awaken. If we deprive ourselves of the concepts of science, we will be unable to understand the physical world. If we deprive ourselves of the concept of the spirit, we'll be equally unable to understand spiritual experience. We might have important things happen, and we may believe we are going crazy. This would be a great shame and a great loss. Religions offer concepts that enable us to understand spiritual experience. One could call meeting Amitabha meeting Jesus, meeting Moses if one liked. Right? People do manifestly have good deaths and bad deaths. We call a good death entering the Pure Land, and this terminology is very helpful. In this life, we can also help a person as far as the door. In this life, we can only help a person as far as the door of death. We can equip them as well as we can for the journey. Once they pass through the door, they have left us and gone on their way. We hope that our invocations may continue to help them, but we cannot know for certain. We can only do our best. We are foolish beings. Some of us believe that the Pure Land is a concrete place and we'll actually enter that place after death. Some of us believe that the Pure Land is another dimension of reality that cannot be fully conceptualized by mortals during this life. Some believe that the Pure Land is simply an indicator of the way to die well and has no implication on what happens afterwards. We have these diverse opinions. Why? Because we are foolish beings and we do not know. In real life, we have to work with what we have. A simple faith in the reality of the Pure Land, awaiting one after death, can be of enormous benefit, but it is not given to everyone. Even in this, we are not masters of our own life. We cannot choose to believe. Even the question whether we believe or not is not a matter of will. It's an expression of some other power. That in history, people have been, and even today, still have been killed because they do or do not have this or that belief only shows the folly of their persecutors. If such persecutors found true faith, they would know that the faith of the other person is a grace and not something that they must be held to account for by other humans. People also ask, what is the minimum one has to believe to be a Pure Land Buddhist? Belief has always been a dangerous subject in Western culture, ever since people could be thrown to the lions for it, all through the terrible times of the Inquisition and the burning of the heretics. Buddhism, however, had a different kind of approach. One will not be punished for one's beliefs. In order to be a Pure Land Buddhist, one does not have to believe any particular thing. One just has to do the practice. Of course, in order to do the practice, there is the kind of implication that one must believe that saying the Nembutsu, which is Namo Amitabha Buddha or Namo Namida Butsu, does some good, but one does not need to have a worked out theory about what and how. We say the Nembutsu and thereby express gratitude for whatever grace falls into our life and openness to whatever providence may bring. There is no method by which a bombu, which is a foolish being, can make awakening occur. In principle, a life of non-attachment should make the access to the light more likely. But human nature being what it is, even those who live such a life outwardly do not necessarily acquire the real spirit of non-attachment. And those who live in the world do not necessarily lack that spirit. Jiriki very easily subverts even the most sublime spiritual practice into spiritual materialism. We could say in generic Buddhist terms that if a practice is not an act of seeking refuge in Buddha, then it is an act of feeding one's neurosis. It does not matter, I think, if you replace the word Buddha for Jesus or Allah for this assertion. The point is that seeking refuge in spirit is what religion is about. However, though one may seek, it does not in itself ensure that one will find. And even though who never consciously seek, sometimes do stumble upon it. This is a practice suitable for both lay and renunciant practitioners. Through Nembutsu, we express gratitude and all the other feelings that one expresses in life, lived in faith in relation to the light. Sometimes faith comes, Sometimes it comes in a second-hand way. All right, I'm going to stop here. There's more, but one last paragraph I'll read. Faith is also cyclical. One way in which it is cyclical is that we waver in and out of faith. There are times when the spiritual life is extremely alive and compelling. There are other times it seems to have disappeared for us, and we fall into a kind of dullness. Although settled faith may go through such barren periods, it never expires. Faith, therefore, is more than a sentiment. Anjan continues even through periods of, I don't know what this word is, accidie, A-C-C-I-D-I-E, accidie. I guess it's a kind of a lull. This is like knowing that the sun is still there, even though the sky may be completely overcast. We can also experience faith as cyclical in a more systematic way using 4 Japanese terms: Shimitsu, Shinjin, Anjin, and Bodaishin. Nice words. Okay, so what's the first one? Shimitsu. What is Shimitsu? Shimitsu means intimacy. It's about the secret in one's heart. It indicates a sense of tenderness towards what we are inclining towards. So it's intimacy, it's tenderness. That's called Shimitsu. Second word is Shinjin. Shinjin is the ecstasy of spiritual breakthrough, where the light reaches us and we feel uplifted. So first is Shimitsu, second is Shinjin. First is intimacy, second one is a kind of a spiritual breakthrough. Anjan refers to a settled faith, which is not spectacular, but it persists through the ups and downs of life, through the thick and thin of life. Anjan, A-N-J-I-N, Anjan. And the last one is Bodaishin. Bodaishin is the faith that reaches out to others. Bodaishin refers to great heart, enlightened heart. It is also known as Bodhicitta in other schools of Buddhism. Bodaishin. For Shimitsu, Shinjin, Anjin, and Bodaishin, therefore, we could say intimacy, ecstasy, fidelity, and commitment. So beautiful. So faith will go through cycles of intimacy, ecstasy, fidelity, and commitment. In this regard, we can think of the spiritual life is like a marriage. The true spiritual practitioner is married to the light. These are 4 manifestations of Shinjin, when the term is used in the broad sense to cover all forms of Nimbutsu faith. We learned 4 beautiful words: Shimitsu, Shinjin, Anjin, and Bodaishin. Intimacy, ecstasy, a settled faith of fidelity, and the commitment to being of great benefit to all beings. Bodhicitta. Excellent. Take a minute of silence. Let's listen to the Amitabha Sutra. This is, I've recited the Amitabha Sutra, so just listen to it. And just feel it. Feel into these beautiful words. They're coming from centuries and centuries back. Feel these words. By J.C. Cleary, narrated by Nitishanti. Let me check the settings. I'm not sure why I can't hear. The Amitabha Sutra, translated by J.C. Cleary, narrated by Nitishanti. Thus have I heard, once the Buddha was in the land of Shravasti, in the garden of Jeta and Anathapindika. He was accompanied by 1,250 great bhikshus, all of them great arahants, well known to everyone. Among them were his leading disciples, such figures as the elders Shariputra, Mahamaugalayana, Mahakashyapa, Mahakatyayana, Mahakoshtila, Revata, Suddhi Patanka, Nanda, Ananda, Rahula, Kavangpatti, Pindola Bharadwaj, Kalodayin, Pina, Vakula, and Aniruddha, and others such as these, all great disciples. Also present were the Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, Manjushri, Prince of the Dharma, the Bodhisattva Ajita, the Invincible, the Bodhisattvas Gandhahastin and Nityodukta, and other such great Bodhisattvas. Also present was Shakra, the King of Gods, along with countless numbers of heavenly beings, making up a great assembly. At that time, Buddha said to the elder Shariputra, west of here, past 100 billion Buddha lands, there exists a world called ultimate bliss. In this land, there is a Buddha named Amitabha who's teaching the Dharma right now. Shariputra, why is this land called ultimate bliss? It is called ultimate bliss because the sentient beings in this land are free from the myriad sufferings common to mankind and only know every kind of joy. Furthermore, this land is called ultimate bliss because it is surrounded by 7 rings of railings and 7 layers of netting and 7 rows of trees, all made of the 4 precious jewels. Moreover, Shariputra, the land of ultimate bliss, has ponds of 7 jewels filled with the waters of 8 virtues. The bottom of each of the ponds is pure golden sand, and the stepped walkways that lead up from all 4 sides of each of the ponds are made of gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and crystal. Above the ponds there are towers which are adorned with silver and gold and lapis lazuli and crystal and mother of pearl, red agate and carnelians. In the ponds there are lotus flowers as big as cartwheels, blue ones shining with blue light, yellow ones shining with yellow light, red ones shining with red light, and white ones shining with white light, each emitting a subtle, pure fragrance. The land of ultimate bliss is complete with all these adornments and virtues, and there is more Shariputra. Celestial music is constantly playing in this Buddha land, and the ground is made of pure gold. Heavenly flowers rain down at all hours of the day and night. In the morning, the sentient beings in this land fill their robes with multitudes of wondrous flowers. and make offerings to hundreds of billions of Buddhas in other worlds. When it is mealtime, they return to their own land to eat and circumambulate the teaching assembly. Shariputra, the land of ultimate bliss, is complete with all these adornments and virtues. And there is more still, Shariputra. In this land there are birds of all sorts of wondrous variegated colors, white cranes, peacocks, orioles, egrets, kalavinkas, and jivanvivas. All these birds bring forth harmonious songs day and night. Their songs communicate such Buddhist teachings such as the 5 roots, the 5 powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Eightfold Path, as well as other teachings. When sentient beings in this land hear the singing of the birds, they become mindful of the Buddha, mindful of the Dharma, mindful of the Sangha. Shariputra, do not think that these birds were born as birds due to karmic retribution for past deeds. Why not? In this Buddha land, the 3 lower parts of existence do not exist. Shariputra, in this Buddha land, even the names of those parts of existence do not exist, much less the realities. All these birds are creations of Amitabha Buddha, fashioned in order to sing the sounds of the Dharma. Shariputra, in this Buddha land, there is a slight breeze that stirs the rows of jewel trees and jewel netting, and they emit subtle, wondrous sounds like hundreds and thousands of melodies playing all at once. All those who hear these sounds spontaneously become mindful of the Buddha, mindful of the Dharma, mindful of the Sangha. Shariputra, the land of ultimate bliss, is complete with all these adornments and virtues. What do you think, Shariputra? Why is this Buddha called Amitabha? Shariputra, the light of this Buddha is infinite and shines on all lands throughout the universe without obstruction. Thus this Buddha is called Amitabha. Also Shariputra, the lifespan of this Buddha and his people is an infinite number of immeasurable eons, and so he is called Amitabha. Amitabha Buddha attained enlightenment 10 eons ago. Moreover, Shariputra, this Buddha has innumerable disciples, all of whom are arahants, whose numbers are incalculable. Amitabha also has a following of innumerable bodhisattvas. The land of ultimate bliss is complete with all these adornments and virtues. Moreover, Shariputra, none of the sentient beings who are born in the land of ultimate bliss ever fall back into a lower realm. Many among them have only 1 more lifetime to go before Buddhahood. Their number is incalculable. They can be spoken of as innumerable. Shariputra, when sentient beings hear these teachings, they must take a vow to be born in this land. Why so? So they can be together with all these beings of superior goodness. Shariputra, one cannot be born in this land through minor good roots and causal connections. Shariputra, if there are good men or good women who hear of Amitabha Buddha and recite his name single-mindedly and without confusion for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or 6 days or 7 days, then when these people are about to die, Amitabha Buddha and his whole assembly will appear before them. When they are about to die, their minds being unified and not chaotic, they will attain rebirth in Amitabha's land of ultimate bliss. Shariputra, I have seen this benefit, and so I speak these words. If sentient beings hear what I say, they must make a vow to be born in that land. Shariputra, right now I am extolling the benefits of the inconceivable virtues of Amitabha Buddha. In the eastern direction, there are also countless other Buddhas, like Akshobhya Buddha, the Buddha marks of the Polar Mountain, the Buddha Great Polar Mountain, the Buddha Light of the Polar Mountain, and the Buddha Wondrous Voice. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and covers a whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe this sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues, which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, in the world of the southern direction, there are countless other Buddhas, like the Buddha lamp of the sun and the moon, the Buddha light of renown, the Buddha great blazing shoulders, the Buddha lamp of the polar mountain, the Buddha infinite vigor. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and covers a whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe the sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues, which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, in the world of the western direction, there are countless other Buddhas, like the Buddha infinite life, the Buddha innumerable characteristics, the Buddha innumerable banners, the Buddha great light, the Buddha great illumination, the Buddha jewel appearance, the Buddha light of purity. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and covers a whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe the sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues, which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, in the world of the northern direction, there are countless other Buddhas, like the Buddha blazing shoulders, the Buddha supreme voice, the Buddha hard to injure, the Buddha born of the sun, and the Buddha netted light. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and covers a whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe the sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, in the world of the Nadir, there are countless other Buddhas like the Buddha lion, the Buddha repute, the Buddha light, the Buddha dharma banner, the Buddha upholding the dharma. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and cover the whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe the sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, in the world of the zenith, there are countless other Buddhas like the Buddha pure voice, the Buddha sojourner king, the Buddha incense fragrance, the Buddha fragrant light, the Buddha great blazing shoulders, the Buddha body of multicolored jewel flower garlands, the Buddha Sala, tree king, the Buddha precious flower virtue, the Buddha sees all truths, and the Buddha like the polar mountain. Each of them teaches in his own land with the truthfulness of a Buddha and covers the whole cosmos, speaking these sincere words. All of you sentient beings should believe the sutra, extolling inconceivable virtues, which all Buddhas protect and keep in mind. Shariputra, why do you think this is called the sutra that is protected and kept in mind by all the Buddhas? Shariputra, if there are good men or good women who hear the sutra, uphold it, and hear the names of all these Buddhas, these good men and good women will be protected and kept in mind by all the Buddhas, and will not retrogress along the path of supreme perfect enlightenment. Therefore, Shariputra, all of you should faithfully accept what I say and what the Buddhas have said. Shariputra, all those who have vowed, or are vowing, or will vow to be born in the land of Amitabha Buddha, reach the level where they do not retrogress from supreme perfect enlightenment. They are already born, they are now being born, and will be born in that land. Therefore, Shariputra, all good men and women, if they have faith, must make a vow to be born in that land. Shariputra, just as I am now extolling the inconceivable virtues of all the Buddhas, all those Buddhas are likewise extolling my inconceivable virtues with these words. Sakyamuni Buddha is able to carry out a most difficult, a most rare task in the Saha world, the world of endurance, in the world of the five corruptions, the corruption of age, the corruption of views, the corruption of afflictions, the corruption of sentient beings, the corruption of life. He is able to achieve supreme perfect enlightenment and expound the Pure Land teaching, which all beings in all worlds find hard to believe. Shariputra, know then that in the midst of this difficult world of the five corruptions, I am able to carry out this rare task, attain supreme perfect enlightenment, and expound the Pure Land teaching, which is so hard for beings in all worlds to believe. This is indeed most difficult. And when the Buddha finished teaching the sutra, Shariputra and all the monks and gods and humans and asuras and others who had been listening, having heard what the Buddha said, rejoiced and faithfully accepted it. They all bowed in homage and departed. And here ends the Amitabha Sutra. Namo Amitabha Buddha. 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 All right, everybody, well done. If there are any final questions, happy to take it. Raise your hand. Read the comments. It was a blessed session of Amitabha Buddha's grace. Wonderful. Nice. All right, go ahead, Tejavu. Go ahead.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes. Oh, you got muted. Try again.
Okay, fine. It was so nice to listen about Pure Land. So I have this question. This might not be limited to this, but on a bigger picture, it needs to be asked.
Right.
So if there is no promise done to any mortal human being, no matter whatever be their faith, whatever the system, so is it possible on how to comprehend it? You know what I'm saying is, it's always ends up with immortality or eternity or something called as heaven and everything, right? So what is the whole point if a human being cannot actually imbibe all these things in the present life? So what's your take on it?
What a great question. I think it's okay. I think you just live your natural life and you have your ups and downs and you follow your instincts and you'll go through your life. And may not be a bad life, actually. I think the more complicated we get, the more complicated systems we need to get out of the complication. Maybe it's okay to just be very natural. Then you don't need complicated religions and complicated belief systems. But the fact is we are pretty complicated, most of us. So then to get out of the complication requires something. I think for someone who is very clear, hardly anything is needed. You're already one, you're already in alignment. I mean, already you're in a pure land. Already you're awake, already it's simple, you know. But if the thorn is in the skin, then sometimes you need another thorn to pull it out. So all of these teachings are like upai. I love this word upai, skillful means, countless upai, different religions, different teachers. Don't even have to be religious. Therapists, counselors, coaches, parents, so many guides, mentors, you name it. They're all just trying to support us to come to a place of little less confusion, little less resistance, little less conflict, little less contradiction within ourselves. So whatever supports you in that. Yeah. So I don't know what it would be like if that was the case. But definitely, I'm grateful that I've come across teachings like this that have, first of all, given me, I look at it like this. You start from hypnosis. Then you go to rehypnosis, and then you go to dehypnosis. What is hypnosis? Hypnosis is you are born into this collective dream. And that is, you go to school, you go to college, you're surrounded by all these people, and you're indoctrinated into the collective trance we're all in, the collective societal trance of what a good life is, what success is, what happiness is, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, what men should do, what women should do. We get into a kind of collective hypnosis. then we start realizing some parts of this hypnosis are really terrible. For example, thinking that boys are better than girls. It's pretty stupid recognition, right? Thinking that we should cut down all the forests to grow the economy. It's really stupid. You start asking questions like, this makes no sense. So then you start saying, but could there be a better way? Being self-critical all the time is no good. I need to think better thoughts. So you go from hypnosis to re-hypnosis. Can I have more loving thoughts about myself? Can I look at everybody, no matter what their gender is, no matter what their race is, no matter what their sexual orientation is? Can I look at them with kind eyes, loving eyes? Can I look at the world as not separate from me, but I am a part of the world? And I don't want to just use the world, but I want to look at it as sacred. Not even just sustainable, but sacred. I see the world as sacred. These are all examples of re-hypnosis. You're upgrading your programming. But then there's the possibility of de-hypnosis, de-hypnotizing yourself. That's where awareness comes in. So with meditation, with self-inquiry, with deep reflection, with contemplating teachings like this, a possibility emerges of a next level, which is even beyond hypnosis and re-hypnosis. It's de-hypnosis. Now you start coming out of all the concepts, including some very deeply embedded concepts about who we think we are, what we think the world is. And the best example is in the movie Matrix. He starts coming out of the Matrix. He starts waking up to the fact that, oh, wow, it's all a program. Oh, wow, it's all one big game that's going on. Oh, what if it's all a dream? So this is a whole other level. And then once you've had even a little bit, you had even a tiny glimpse of being dehypnotized in that way. Now, when you re-enter this realm, you're not going to get caught as easily. You see, you're not going to get caught on the web as easily. You can still get caught to some extent, but now the hooks have reduced, right? You can't get so easily hooked. You can't get so easily caught in the matrix. So you will still, again, you'll still have some hypnosis, you'll still get re-hypnotized, but now more and more that access to the de-hypnotized state becomes more and more available, more and more available. So that's the way I see it. I see these teachings it's less about a promise, because promise is just another reconditioning. Like even reading out the sutra and all of that, it's a kind of reconditioning from an earlier belief system to a new belief system. But the real point is to go beyond all systems of belief. It's to go beyond all of this and to awaken that Amitabha Buddha within you. But words can only point to it, right? Words can only point to it. We have to have that, our own awakening, our own intuition. So that's what it's pointing us to. So I'm grateful that, at least in my case, that path was shown to me. And to some extent, I walked that path. So for that, I'm grateful. And to whatever extent it can help somebody else, I'm happy to show that to others. So I hope that answered your question to some extent.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Beautiful. My good friend Julius is here. Julius, how nice to see you, or at least see your photograph.
Hey, Nitya.
Hello. Where are you right now?
I'm in Barcelona.
Oh, lovely.
Yes. Candy and I just got a baby girl.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes.
You
Wonderful teaching. I really enjoyed like zapping in and listening to you. And while listening, I was moved to share one experience I had, or two actually, of calling a Buddha. In fact, once I had an ayahuasca ceremony, and I had an inquiry, like I want to know the one who is in control. Like I felt so tortured and tormented by always having this super ego or some kind of voice in me that is like not a kind emperor, you know? And I felt the session would be really intense. And so in the beginning of the session, I sat in meditation, and I felt I could use some support or guidance and help. And so I called upon the Buddha, I called upon all my teachers, I called upon Nitya Shanti, I called upon Gangaji, Papaji, Ramana Maharshi, and the Buddha, and just visualized everyone in front of my face, and bowed and asked for the help, and so I was meditating for a while, and eventually there's, like, to cut a long story short, a Buddha appeared in me in like a brown robe, and the face was dark, like black, because it was completely in shadows, and the head was bowed a little bit. And as I was sitting in front of the Buddha, and the Buddha was raising his head, and the leg disappeared and I saw my own face. So from calling in these Buddhas, these enlightened ones, and asking for their support with real meaning, because I really felt I needed the help and I really needed the support. The Buddha in me, I felt it awoke in that night. It was really, really beautiful. It was a very moving moment.
That's so well said. That's actually the whole insight, is who we're actually praying to is ourselves, and who we're actually blaming is also ourselves. So it's an encounter with ourselves. And
yes,
ayahuasca is that grandmother who teaches us, who shows us that.
Yes. And also when you were speaking about the astral planes, that they appear on every level, like another very remarkable experience I will never forget happened in another session. Like, it was towards the end of the session, and we were all lying outside, or a few of us were lying outside by the fire, and it was the end of the night, and I was just dreaming away or getting insights and looking into the sky. And as I was looking into the sky, like, you could see clouds, and a series of clouds appeared, like floating in, which was a Buddha in a full lotus position, so perfectly. It was not like, oh, that kind of looks like an elephant or anything. It was like a full lotus position with one hand lowered in a receiving position and the other hand up in a mudra, and kind of flowing in from head to sitting position just over us. And I was like, oh my god, like, this is so amazing. And even pointed to my friends. It was not something that I saw, like, I just pointed at it, and they were also like, oh wow, because it was just like the perfect resemblance. And that's when for the first time I really realized this is so much bigger than like some kind of a spiritual realm. It's like universal, beyond what I can imagine. And just like what you were reciting just now. So such a blissful moment.
Oh, but thank you for sharing these experiences.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so as we go along this path, then these experiences at the right time, they will come to us, and it's in direct proportion to our sincerity, our earnestness, our sincerity. It's got nothing to do with where you've been, what you've done, how spiritual you think you are or not, how evolved you think you are or not, whether you think you're a young soul or a mature soul or an old soul. It doesn't work like that. This is grace, and this is, I like the word he used in the reading that we did. It's an encounter. This practice is about an encounter. It's about an encounter with you yourself, you in your life, and finding the grace in all of that. And not just seeing the world as perfect, but allowing the world to see us as perfect. Allowing the transcendent power, the intelligence of the universe to see us. Look at yourself through God's eyes. And God is completely at ease, because God feels he, she, it has done a perfect job. And you and I are not convinced about it. No, not perfect. But what happens when we even momentarily see ourselves like that? What happens? Beautiful. So thank you all for allowing me to share. Go ahead, Prachi, last person before we end.
So thank you, Nitya, for today's session. It was, I think, much needed dose for me. Somehow now I've been exposed to a lot of teachings and religion from very beginning of my life. I started my journey as my father was a Arya Samaji. My mother was Natani, and then I went to a Christian school, and then married to in a third family. There are a lot of mix in the religion itself. So I really don't know which one to follow, so I follow all of them. But then there was something amiss. I used to feel there's something more than what I'm doing. So I started practicing Buddhism. That was this Nichiren Buddhism that I practiced. And this came because I have friends who've been following Tibetan Buddhism, but I didn't have any deep knowledge about it. Although I knew few of the chants and all, and whatever I practice, whether it is, even I was doing this Bhagavad Gita classes in between. So whatever I've chanted, I've chanted with full conviction. This is the mantra, not doubting it. And I feel at that point of time, in that moment, that was a mantra for me. Maybe one, like the Nichiren mantra that I follow, Namyo Renge Kyo, is one the permanent ID mantra, and these are my transient ID, which keeps changing according to the need-based basis, at that time of life where I am in. So all that is fine. And if I look back and see my spiritual journey or battles that I fought in my life, I have been a winner, right? All through, and I've been a warrior. I just can't deny that. Now the thing is, even when I'm mindful of what I'm going through, I bounce back. But then when I fall into that lower life state, I somehow find everything meaningless. It's like the spiritual journey or my other journey, whatever I'm going through, they become meaningless. They are like pointless. I don't know whether my question over here is whether as and when we advance in our spiritual journey, do we still go through all these things? And how long should it, what's the way out? Because I'm literally, the swing, I'm trying to reduce the oscillation between two worlds, between my lower life state and higher life state. Because when I'm in that state, Buddha state, I'm really at peace. But when I'm in a lower life state, I feel I'm pathless. I'm not heading towards it's stagnant somewhere. So how do I go about it?
Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. And it's the way I see it, it's bringing your Buddha into all your life states. This whole dichotomy of high life state, low life state, Buddha state. It's about bringing, instead of trying to get to the Buddha state. Suppose I tell you that for the rest of your life, you will have these ups and downs. Instead of having the assumption, see, this is the whole Bombu perspective, that, oh, I'll practice, I'll do this mantra, I'll do this Nembutsu, I'll do this whatever chant, I'll do the Namyoho Renge Kyo, I'll do the other mantras, and then I'll come to the being in Buddha state all the time. And I'm here to tell you that it could happen. It's quite unlikely. It's more likely that you will have ups and downs for the rest of your life. And what if that's not a mistake?
No, that's gonna be there. That's okay. Because
what if we bring our Buddha nature, we bring it into that. We, instead of trying to, so why is it a problem? If you're in the low life state, why are you struggling with that? This is also the will of life. This is also, it has taken you many low life states to appreciate something like the Nichiren perspective. It has taken you many low life states to appreciate, to even come for a session like this. You would not have come for a session like, if you only had high life states from the beginning, you would not have come for a session like this, Prachi. You would be very full of yourself that I know there's nothing in me. You would be in a very cocky state, you see. It's because you've been humbled by life again and again and again. You're willing to re-examine, re-look at things and come at it again and again and again. So when strong, serve, when weak, surrender. So when you're in that state, then surrender. And I love the Bodhisattva. You heard me talk about this before. The Bodhicitta perspective for me is one of the most beautiful perspectives. So now when you're going into that state, then you do it on behalf of all beings. Amitabha Buddha has not forgotten us. He comes to our planet with all its ups and downs. He comes to your and my home, and he supports and guides us through all our ups and downs, our low lives. He's not afraid of entering the low life states and high life states. So if we want to awaken our Buddha, we have to be willing to enter those states without resistance. I'm willing to be in a low. Imagine that. Suppose that was your affirmation. I'm willing to enter the low life states. I'm willing to feel stagnant. I'm willing to lose my normal coordinates. I'm willing. Not only am I willing, I invite it. I welcome it. Now, this completely goes in the opposite direction. Otherwise, we're trying, and in the name of spirituality, we're trying to feel good, feel good, feel good. You're not always going to feel good. Feeling good is a nice beginning stage where to build your faith up a little bit. But after that, we take everything as prasad. We take everything as ashirwad. We take everything as grace. We take everything as a blessing. Yesterday, one of the teachers was talking about on our call. She said, even if you have a boil on the face, you look at the boil on the face and say, wow, this is helping me let go of my karmas. So your low life state, imagine for a little, you'll be unhappy for a few weeks, a few months, a few years. In that time, you've worked out hundreds of lifetimes of karma. Suppose you thought like that. It's just a story, but what a powerful story it is. So bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. I'm paying off huge debts with rather low, with rather in these installments, I'm paying off huge debts, massive debts, which otherwise would have taken forever. It's a way of thinking. And that's the way I process these kinds of things. And so not to be attached to any kind of position. In whatever position I've been given is a perfect position I've been given. Prarabdhaya samarpitam. Adi Shankara said, Prarabdhaya samarpitam. I surrender this human life to its own mechanics. Wherever this human life has to go, whatever this mind has to do, whatever this body has to do, Prarabdhaya samarpitam. I let it do what it has to do. This is being established in the Buddha state. This is embracing your Bombu nature, that I am Bombu. I will go through ups and downs. And that's all right. And I stop trying to fidget with it and fix it and improve it. And I come into a place of that Shinjin that he talked about, that Anjin that he talked about. The sense of settled faith that yes, I may have lost sight of the sun, I may have lost sight of the moon, but that doesn't mean it's not there. The sun is there, the moon is there.
So my faith, sorry to interrupt you in between. My faith doesn't get shaken in this time. Whenever I'm going through such a phase, that's not because my faith is shaken. My faith is very steady, very strong. I have conviction of whatever I'm doing, but whichever practice I follow, I make it a point to adapt it into my life. Not just adapting it and doing, I also try to do it fully, completely with pure heart, without doubting or without having any intention of getting something from it, just doing it. Because that's what I can do. If I start expecting, then I'll be in trouble, I'll be disappointed. So I just do it. I do my job, rest is God's job, he'll take care of it. But still sometimes,
actually, there's no still sometimes. Look carefully. And seriously, when you're thinking the way you just said, what you just said, Prachi, it is impossible for you to be in that moment when you're thinking the way you just thought. It is impossible for you to say, but still. That but still is a whole other universe of thinking. When you thought the way you thought right now, that I surrender, I accept, I'm not expecting anything out of the practice, my faith is still strong. In that moment, you're at ease. But when the next thought comes, that's where you're struggling again. Then in that moment, you're not thinking the way you just thought. There's no if and but in that case. So notice this for yourself. You may think that my faith is constant, but no, in those moments, your faith has actually gotten shaken. That's why you're experiencing that. If your faith was constant, you would not experience this kind of shake. So deepen the faith further then. Come back to the basics, come back to your foundation. And clarify that this is the leading edge of your work. This is not an accident. This is not the low life state is not a problem. This low life state is your accelerated path to Buddhahood.
I'll work on it then.
No, there's nothing to work on. You're already on the track. You're completely there. You're completely there. What you just said was actually it. And just check when you come back to what you yourself said. Is there any problem in that precise moment?
See, what happens is, I keep analyzing my journey and my progress also, right? In both forms, in my manifested form and in my spiritual realm. So as far as I'm, the manifested form is concerned, when there are jerks in that, or when it is not as, what I'm expecting it to be, or what I want to manifest, then there is a problem. Then I feel maybe my spiritual journey is going somewhere haywire and I'm making some mistake, that this is going off track, because it's a reflection of that. It's an inside job, but it reflects outside. It's a little confusing.
This is also a bit of a peculiarity of the Nichiren philosophy, that they believe that as long as you're inwardly aligned, all your things will manifest in a cascading order. And honestly, that's not my experience. So maybe we should have a deeper discussion on this. It doesn't always work like that. The mother doesn't always give the child what it wants. The mother sometimes has a bigger viewpoint than you think that if I just do my chanting, I'll do my intentions, and the Buddha will give it everything. I don't think it's as cute as that, actually. I think Nichiren's own life is full of examples where he was exiled. He went through a lot of troubles. He didn't always manifest what he wanted, So this is a deeper discussion.
All warriors, all of us go through that phase.
So I think come beyond. This is, I think, a great entry point to invite people into. See, every religious tradition will have a kind of a visiting card. The visiting card could be healing. The visiting card could be a kind of peace, some kind of encouragement. And for Nichiren, this is the visiting card. Come, desires are not bad. Let's achieve it. But that's the visiting card. I think there are many layers beyond the visiting card.
See, I told you I've been exposed to a lot of.
So I think we'll discuss this offline now.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we'll discuss.
Don't be sorry. It's fine. It's great.
Sorry.
Thank you all for joining today's session. And let's make a big Mayurma. Thank you for joining. Loving wishes to all. Good wishes. Nice big hearts.
Actually, we would love to hear, because all the questions that we fear to ask, someone will ask.
I would love to also hear. I have another appointment, and also someone's rung my doorbell. So honor my own limitations right now, and we will continue.
Thank you.
Mayurma, good wishes. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you. And we will continue at another time. Be well.